welcome to Wild Perspectives. This is a podcast about generally kayaking, but mental health as well, and sharing the perspectives from other guests that we have on, and eventually some professionals. Hopefully, we got one interested already, and hopefully get them scheduled on soon. Today we got Joe Hess with us, and we'll let him go ahead and introduce himself.
Hey there. Yeah, I'm Joe Hess, and how did I get on this? I guess through Nick. I met Nick in Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up and lived up until 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, right around now, I moved to Colorado in the Vail Valley, Eagle River area, and it's been a quite a wild ride in the last 2 years. So, and a lot of different perspective from learning how to boat on the East Coast, Pennsylvania area mostly, and then I come out here to the Colorado and the Rocky Mountains, which changes things up quite a bit.
Can't believe it's been 2 years already. That time
Yeah,
flew by.
yeah. I look up, and it's like, wow, 2 years. Yeah, when I first moved here, I lived in Avon, which is for the skiers amongst you all. That's Beaver Creek Resort right there. And then a year ago, December, I moved to Gypsum, which is down valley, west of Avon Vale. So I'm 25 minutes to Beaver Creek and 30 minutes to Vale.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so um, yeah, I skied already this season. A Basin in October and Vale, Keystone recently.
What got you interested in moving?
I always wanted to move here, as long as I can remember. When I was a teenager, always had my eyes on the Rocky Mountains and always felt like it was something I wanted to do. And then, well, life happened. My generation was following the rules and getting the job, going to college, having a family, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of things that we can fill in the gaps there. But eventually, after a divorce and separation, my kids were older, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to move west. So I did. Found a job, made it happen, moved here. Um, I know that's not always the mean. It's always hard for people to like do that kind of stuff, but the bad news is if you want it bad enough, you can make it happen.
Oh,
Mhm,
definitely. What was the
I mean,
scariest part about doing that?
mhm,
um, leaving everything I knew for 45 years back east, friends, family, experiences.
mhm.
And then there's also, and it's a whole other thing, maybe for another time, but man, there's like this genetic magnet pull. Like I'm 10th generation Hess who lived in that area. So basically, where I moved from was within probably 20 miles as the crow flies, is the first Hess that landed in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so you're originally from Lancaster.
Yeah, I'm originally from Lancaster, grew up there, and moved moved here. Yeah, I always wanted to do it. And boating, one way or another, has always been in my life from a little kid. Um, I guess jumping around, but I think my earliest memories was sitting in a canoe with my dad. Because when my dad was a young man, he did like these canoe races. So like in the 70s, 60 late 60s, early 70s, there was the whole thing of like canoe racing, and people would canoe race down these like local rivers and things like that. And my dad got into these canoe races with his buddy Al, and they collected some beer money, as they would call it back in the day.
I have so much respect for canoers. Like kayaking's hard enough, but I can't imagine only having one blade to use being on your knees.
Yeah, and they were both in there together.
Oh
So it was a
wow.
two-man, old school, you know, you know, when the movie Deliverance came out, that single-handedly like started the launch of canoeing, even more so into popular um areas, right? There's people who probably know more about that than I do. But, yeah, so canoeing was something I always remember as a kid growing up in lakes and things like that. And then I was also a kid of who I went to like YMCA camps. So we did a lot of boating, whether it was in these sailboats or little whatever kind of small kayaks they had back in the day. I don't even know what that was like. I just remember being in small boats that weren't quite a canoe. But then, there's always the canoeing. Um, And then as I got older, I started doing some like whitewater rafting with some school clubs and school events, and then getting into some kayaks, old school, pirouettes and
Hmm.
those sort of things. Um, and then getting into that kind of stuff, more rubber, some
Hmm.
kayaking. And then there was a big gap of time with family life, career, that kind of stuff where I didn't really boat, except maybe getting in the canoes that I had, maybe some rafting with some friends or my kids and family. And then wasn't until like in my 40s that I got early 40s that I got back into kayaking and hard boating.
Well,
So,
So,
what do you think? What do you think the biggest struggle of getting back into it has been for you?
um, I think probably technology changes, right?
Hmm.
So I think that was the biggest thing that I was like, wow, this is how I used to do it. And then now new technology makes it so much easier. Much like skiing, right? From the
Hmm.
straight skis to the shape skis, and
Hmm.
how much easier it is to ski now, and why there's so many younger good shredders than there were, back in the day, because
Hmm.
it's just so much easier. And I think that with the technology within kayaks, makes a big difference, and it decreases the barrier to entry. I think with access to kayaks too. I mean, and social media and online communication. Like, I mean, anybody who's in the boating world, I mean, you can find if you're looking for a kayak, you can find a kayak and get it to you, within a week if you want one, like a good one, a good whitewater kayak.
yeah, and for pretty cheap too. You can get a
Yeah.
nice bow for 150, $200.
So I think that's the biggest thing is like access is just so much easier. Um, and again, social media impacts finding people to boat with, clubs, individuals. It just, if you're willing to put yourself out there, you're going to find people who you can learn from and go out and have a good time with. You know.
So, where do you? So, you were kind of explaining that you were an East Coast paddler for a while, then you moved up to Colorado. I think a lot of boaters here don't really experience anything other than East Coast whitewater. So, in that transition, what did you find to be easier and or harder?
Um, so I mean, just to, you know, I'm a class 4 boater at best. I'm not going to get into class 5 unless I'm in a raft. That's just how I boat. If I was younger, I'd push it a little bit more. But my experience, so out here in the West, it's seasonal, right? It's not year-round boating is can happen, but it's hard, especially up here in elevation. So your prime boating is like April, end of April through beginning of May through like July. And there's always stuff that you can do, if there's dams or water releases. The Arkansas runs, here locally because they have the water release, but then they shut it off. Kind of watch the flows. But the biggest thing, I mean, you know, it's a lot. It's just moves faster. It's flushier. It's pushier. It's constant. Like the biggest thing that when I learned on like East Coast, pool drop stuff, rapids, pull, rapids, pull, rapids, pull, and probably the closest thing that I would like, people say, well, they ask me, I'm like, well, have you paddled the Savage on the Savage releases? How that's just a constant. You're on it from the start to the end.
Oh, that's so much fun.
Yeah,
That's how a lot of it is here. It just feels like that constantly.
yeah, definitely got to learn to work your eddies there, huh?
Yeah, yeah, you do. And you got to be in shape too, and you're at altitude.
Hmm.
I mean, I just like, just down the street here 30 minutes away is, the Shoshone. It's just like a mile and a half stretch right off of I-70. And you're moving into rapids and it can be pretty big. It can get pretty big depending on the flow. But it moves. Of course, the Arkansas um, is the big one that runs through the summer. I get
Hmm.
on that one. Browns Canyon, Numbers, those are the kind of the biggest ones. And then
Hmm.
south of that is the Royal Gorge, which is a really cool paddle through that as well,
Is that a
all the way
multi
down the
day?
Arkansas. No, no people do. Yeah, people do multi days on the Arkansas. They'll camp out overnight, those kind of things.
So I think the Royal Gorge is like class 5+, I think.
Can get that big.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it can. There's sections on the Arkansas above Numbers, Pine Creek. That stuff is class 5 stuff. I walked down to the water's edge when they were doing some races there, and I'm like, wow, this is insane. I would never put myself through that.
Mm-hmm.
I paddle with guys who are those kind of boaters. There's the upper Colorado, it flows south from Kremling through, um, the canyon there, and there's tunnel, and I forget some of the other rapids there. You guys can look them up for me and make sure I get it right. But it flows in, and there's some gnarly stuff in there, and I have not been through there yet. But then there's Pump House is the upper part of the upper Colorado, and people will do some multi-day floats all the way down the Colorado, to the point of maybe take out a gypsum or get to the dam, and go through there.
Is a lot of the stuff out west more dam controlled or more natural flows?
It's all natural. A lot of it's natural flows. So you're working with the runoff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and then I'd say you're just talking. Before we started recording, Sam, you were talking about play parks and access. When there's runoff, I mean, I have a number of play parks within 30 minutes of my house here. There's one that's 10 minutes in my house that has four really nice features.
Yeah, I mean, and you being close to it, that's kind of nice, especially being the new kid in town. I mean, you're linked right into the community. So, yeah, I mean, that's perfect. That's prime time.
Yeah, there's the Eagle Play Park, which is in Eagle, Colorado. There's 4 features there, which is really nice. And there's a lot of opportunities there, from little beginner stuff to more advanced. There's a lot of surfers there and boogie boarders that also get in the play wave there as well. People on surfboards as well. That's a good place to go. The Glenwood Springs has a nice play wave. I've been into that one. At higher flows, that one's, you got to catch it, and then you got to paddle hard to get back back across the eddy line to get back up there. Otherwise, you're going down and having to get out at a bigger eddy and walk up across the road and then get back in. There's play parks in the Arkansas, Buena Vista, Salida. There's some good ones there. I've been in the Buena Vista one, or as if you were a native, they call it Buena Vista, or Buena Vista, or BV. And then the GoPro games happen in Vail.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a big event. Second weekend of June is when that happens. And I've been there the last couple of years, taking photos.
How's the turnout for that?
Amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. It's not like the Green Race or, something like that, but it's huge because there's all kinds of different events there. It's not just kayaking.
Okay.
Gosh, I mean, I don't know. Talking to you guys, I think about the things that I can't do. It seems like a lot of stuff is packed in. They have River Fest, they have Yampa River Fest, and Salida Fest, and Buena Vista. People are all in that time frame. The pros will come and they'll just rotate through those areas. And Yampa River up in Steamboat Springs, there's a play park up. There's a play wave up there. I was up there a year ago. A lot of times I take photos, so that's a lot of fun too. In the springtime, but right before the GoPro Mountain Games, there's the weekly kayak raft sup race series on the Gore Creek through Vail. So they put in at the cover bridge and take out an international bridge. An international bridge is where you see all the play kayaks, those events happening. So they'll do a course and race once a week from May all the way up into the GoPro games.
So I'm not sure all the traveling that Nick has done, but I've done quite a bit of traveling for boating. So I've experienced different boating cultures throughout the states, throughout the world, and so I'd like to get your take on it, being now that you're kind of immersed in more of a West Coast boating culture. like here, this is what we are. This is what we do year round. There is no other sport. And then something I noticed out there where there were guys who were obviously insanely good at it, but in the winter they're skiers. They go to the coast and surf. They have many different hobbies. So, what was your kind of experience with the change of culture there?
Yeah, so definitely more rubber, multi-day trips,
Mm-hmm.
16-foot rafts, you know, 14, 16-foot rafts, 18-foot rafts for the big stuff, but a lot more rubber, a lot more oar rigs. People talk about that. There's a lot more. I would say there's a big stand-up paddling community as well, um, and maybe it's grown more in the last 2 years on the East Coast. But they'll sup everything. Kayakers, there's a lot, but it almost feels like it's overwhelmed by the rubber culture. You know,
That can be
um,
very dangerous for kayakers. Some rivers, the rafts are more dangerous than the kayak or
yeah,
the sieves and undercuts.
and there's not as much of that here because it's granite, smooth granite, and big boulders. It doesn't seem to me like there's a lot of as many like sieves and undercuts and hazards. But again, I'm not paddling that bigger water and put myself into those situations just because of my risk tolerance.
Okay.
Um, I noticed. I would say maybe it's just the group I paddle with. Nick, I paddled with you plenty of times. I think I just kind of felt like back in the East Coast, the kayakers were a lot more playful,
Yeah.
and would play a lot more and play every feature and all that kind of stuff. But by nature, I think you could do that a little bit more because of the way the rapids and pool drops are, as opposed to it always being constantly pushy. So there's a lot more, creeker boats out here, those kind of things, just because of the bigger water and the pushier, faster water.
What's your
Yeah.
go-to boat?
I have a code, Dagger code.
Mm.
That's what I use. Yeah, and then I have a Jackson Rockstar that I get into. Have to lose some weight to get into it again, but
Which one do you prefer? Play boating or creek boating?
I like them for different reasons. There's a time and a place for each one. So I only have used my playboat in the play waves and the play parks out here, um, because I can't sit in it long enough that it feels comfortable to do anything more than getting in and out. Um, but I like my code. I mean, I've been through a couple different ones. I had the Mamba back in the day. I paddled a Burn for a little bit. Um, then I had a Rewind,
Mhm.
a large Rewind, which was that couldn't play too well. Um,
Daggers are just so comfortable.
and I have a Phantom, Dagger Phantom. But then I got the code, and I'm like, this thing is like I like it better than the Phantom. Like it reminded me more of my Rewind and its ability to spin and turn in the it's more forgiving. Um, so my code's my go-to boat. Have the Rockstar, and then I also have a Shredder as well. So I use that when I want to go run some bigger water or just have a lazy day with some friends.
Just a solo shredder, or do you go with someone else?
I typically go with somebody else. I've soloed it, but I'm not that I'm not that
I was
good.
gonna say that
I
seems
can
like
get
a lot
myself
of
into
effort.
trouble. Yeah, it's a lot of effort. And again, you don't think about it, but the altitude, I figure it gets to me sometimes. Just, if I'm paddling at 6, 7,000, 8,000 feet, you feel it.
Yeah, I think that's something we don't think about much is the altitude, since we never have to.
Yeah. So circling back, Sam, the other part of your question is, yeah, people do other sports, you know,
Yeah.
mountain biking, skiing, fly fishing.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that we contend with out here. When you're on the river, you're also sharing it with fishermen. They're in their fishing rigs, so you know, so a lot of times. So the thing with Colorado is, so it's a lot of the water is private water, so you
Huh.
can't access and fish from the shore. So there's a lot of float trips that happen, and there's rules around that. Like if it's private property, like you can't go up to the shore and stop and fish. You can't put your anchor down. You have to kind of keep moving. You can kind of float in an eddy. You could You know, like if you stop too long in an area, people might come out and like give you some heck about it or whatever else. So when the water gets super high, the fishermen aren't out there because it's, you know, flushy and it's just not good fishing. But there's a point in time on the way up and on the way down that you're going to be around fishing rigs as well.
Are a lot of the rivers permit only?
There are out here out west. So that's the other thing too that I didn't experience back east was pulling permits, getting onto the national website to put your name in for the lottery for river permits for the green, or, you know, or the salmon, or, you know, the Dolores and places like that, you know, Utah, Idaho, you know, Colorado, different places. Like, yeah, there's permitted rivers. So I didn't, you know, you don't think about that when you're back east, because you're like, wow, that's just such a long effort to
Yeah,
do it,
it's
a
a
once
big
in a
luxury
lifetime
for
thing.
us.
Yeah, so, you know, but you know, I put in permits for the last 2 years, and I've been putting in for the Grand for years, and I still have yet to pull any permits too. You know, so I would say, like, you know, that's the other thing too that I was exposed to, like the whole getting in there to be able to put your name in for permits,
Yeah,
and a lot of that's just access.
we kind of talked about river access last week. Just kind of like, I think a lot of us just kind of sleep on how great it is here on the East Coast when it comes to river access, and how just taken for granted that it is. I tell you though, another thing that I see is occasionally I'll get a wild hair and I'll just kind of start looking at your used boat markets, like out west, just kind of see what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of like what you were talking about earlier. Don't see a ton of play boats. I see a ton of creek boats, and when I do, they're a lot of them are older creek boats, and they're not really bad off. So I think something that it kind of reminded me of is just the different river structures there. Like how here it's all like a lot of shoals, a lot more rocks to kind of slam into, bust boats on, and out there I just kind of felt like, mind you, it's been several years, but I just kind of felt like everything was a bit bigger, like
Mm-hmm.
rock wise. It wasn't so much like razor blades like on the Ocoee.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you just brought something up to me. I'm glad I learned to kayak on the East Coast because of the pool drop scenario and the rapids and things like that, because and different areas, because I could get a roll in, I could learn how to roll, all that kind of stuff, and I could learn primary, secondary stability. There's rivers here that I paddle. I mean, if there is no error for roll, like there is no room for a roll, like it's shallow, like it might only be like a foot deep or something like that, or a foot and a half, or you might topple over and you might have, you know, 5 feet later you're into shallow water sometimes. Like it, you know, I paddled the lower blue, and, you know, because that would be north of Silverthorne, and I paddled that, and I'm like, man, I wouldn't want to have to like learn how to paddle or how to kayak on this river, because it's just not the space and place to do it. You can, but then the other thing is it's also cold. I mean, I'm wearing a dry suit all the way through June.
Ooh. I don't know
And
about
then
that.
you're putting your dry suit on if you're paddling in the fall, you know, in October, if you're, you know, in a kayak.
Do you think that those features are kind of what push Rover closer a little bit more?
Just bigger water,
Yeah,
multi-day trips.
yeah.
You know, if I had the money, I'd buy a 15-foot oar rig, you know, and do the multi-day trips and things like that. That'd be a lot of fun.
I guess
But I
this.
have too many other interests too. Like you said, I ski all the time in the wintertime. I do backcountry stuff now that I'm out here. Mountain bike out my back door is some of the best mountain biking. Moab's 3 hours away. You know,
I mean,
it's
just
just
being a
different.
photographer is expensive. Like
Yeah.
some of those lenses are like $30,000.
Yes. I'm also a photographer, and I've been doing some freelance photography. Did some freelance stuff this past year. Did some freelance stuff for you know, a couple boat trips. You know, so there's also that. I'm not like, you know, there's people who are photo boaters. I mean, the stuff I've done was all from the shore, or I would follow them and that kind of stuff. You know.
Just good at making everyone around him look good on the water.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, go to you can find me. I'm on Instagram, joe.hess on Instagram, or joehess.com. You can find my photos that I post. But yeah, I've been a photographer all my life basically, and I just kind of bought the gear, and I'm trying to transition more into doing some more freelance and some more multi different things related to photography, not specializing in one thing or another. But I do shoot a lot of whitewater. I shoot what I know.
Mhm.
You know,
Is that
there's
Uh,
photo?
there's some really good photo boaters out there.
Is that photo behind you yours?
That is
Where's that?
that's the Gore Range.
That looks
That's the
beautiful.
that's the Gore Range, from the Silverthorne area, looking west. The Gore Range, you can see it from the top of Vale, the top of Beaver Creek. That's looking east. So, um, yeah, I could go on a lot about photography, and I have a little bit of a rant about that, and kayakers and boaters,
Go
and
for it. Bring it.
let's-
Bring the heat.
the worst thing that any kayaker could do is screen grab a photo that a photographer took of them on a river.
they do it all the time.
Buy it, buy it,
Yeah.
buy it. Don't be that idiot, and don't be that jerk who
Yeah.
screen grabs it. Just like spend the $25, because like you're being cheap. You're being cheap. You pay for gas, you pay for food, you pay for stuff, but yet there's somebody out there trying to make a living. And $25 is cheap for a photo, let me tell you. Because that lens that they're using, couple $1,000.
Yep.
That camera that they're using, a couple $1,000. The Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever they're using, like that has a subscription, and that costs money. And then they got to pay for their time and all that kind of stuff. And if they weren't there taking that photo, you wouldn't have that photo.
Was nothing cringier than seeing somebody's Facebook profile picture with damn watermarks all over it. And we've all seen it. That's the crazy
Yeah.
thing, like, dude. Especially when you see people like at the Ocoee, or if they're on the Nantahala. Like, dude, we all know that picture was $5. You're so
Pay for it. Yeah, typically like a thumbnail is like $5 or $10, but like pay the $25, because guess what? Like, and you're gonna remember that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, what's the worst someone's time? Oh, I can do that. No, you can't. You could take your iPhone out and take a photo, but the professional photographer who's taking those photos, they have the equipment,
Yeah,
and you don't. And there's a big difference.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just think it's the worst whenever I see anybody doing those screen grabs. Typically, I'm going to be that guy who will call them out, be like, "Hey, nice photo. Are you too poor to pay for the photographer's time to actually get it?"
Yeah.
There's a guy in the Upper Yock Facebook group who came in to bitch about like a raft running over him, and it was clear someone else posted a video under it of him pulling out in front of the raft, cutting the raft off, and getting plowed over. But then the photo that he used to showcase was, I think, one of Kara's photos with the watermark clearly labeled over it. And he got roasted for it and ended up just leaving the group.
Yeah, and she does a really good job taking photos. And people take that stuff for granted, but man, she's in multiple locations on the upper Yock, multiple days.
She puts in the work.
She does put it. So don't screen grab stuff. Pay for it. That's the worst.
So obviously, we're not live right now, but you can at any time tell me that you don't want to answer a question. But I was kind of wanting to pick your mind a little bit about. You said that you'd gone through a divorce, kind of like a bunch of change in your life, pushed you towards moving out west that you had always wanted to do. I myself recently, not too recent, but a while back, went through a divorce. Kind of pushed me into boating a little bit harder. I think like mentally, I just needed the support of the community, and in return, it was a beautiful thing. Saved me from a lot of heartache and loneliness.
Mhm.
Through your times of through your time and trials that you went through during that time in your life, kind of where did the community fall in for you?
I mean, that was back in Pennsylvania when a lot of that stuff happened. But I mean, I leaned on the kayaking community. It was something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't just have to be kayaking. It could be anything, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the community is welcoming, at least been my experience. There are elitists in any community, but,
Yeah.
you can just ignore those folks. Most people ignore them anyway, you know, or they talk in whispers, and those people are off on their little crowd. Who cares? But yeah, I leaned on the community a lot. I made some good friends, talked to people now. I mean, met people like Nick, paddle in different groups, that kind of stuff. And, the communities exist beyond just kayaking.
Yeah.
So, and I can get into this, but, one of the things I want to do in my future, whether it's here or somewhere else, is helping bridge communities together. And I see it a little bit more here because I'm in Colorado, where it's like there's people, you do everything, not anything outdoors, right? Hunting, fishing, cycling, skiing, whatever, all that, kayaking, boating, all that kind of stuff. And people do stay loyal to those communities, but at the same time, there's a lot of overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you overlap those communities and bring those overlapping communities together and
Yeah.
bring people together? So it's really, back to your question, man, I think also, it did help me finding the kayaking community and finding the people who I kayaked with. And then COVID hit,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that really brought a bunch of people together as well, especially when when all we had was outside activities.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that brought a lot of people together, and we were on the river together, paddling together, sharing experiences, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it really blew up some clubs and others kind of died out, but like Conowago just blew up because of COVID.
Yeah. And that's a whole other topic sometime, but, it, like I was in the Conowago club, and that's who I, paddled with, and, learned to paddle better with, get re-entry back in the day. And, I say back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, but, it really takes the people in the club and the leadership of the club. There are people within the club that kind of hold things together and kind of are the glue, if you will. And then it takes just kind of this like certain energy and certain way that things were happening. You know, um, when we were doing that during COVID, Pete and Maria did the Peckway paddles on the Peckway Creek, small little creek, like a couple small little features, but it was a weekly thing that happened. And they posted about it, and people showed up, and they posted about it, and it showed up. And then it kind of, then there was, the Susquehanna River, which is nearby, flat river, but there was some features and things you could practice. So, those kind of things like really take people to, it takes a special kind of person to be able to kind of hold things together, like, and create and keep the momentum of the clubs going.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Pete did a really good job, and I know him and I butt heads sometimes and give each other a lot of shit. But at the end of the day, he really brought that club together and ran a lot of
Yeah.
events that really grew it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just attracted different people, and people come in and out, and I think one of the biggest things that I noticed, and it's kind of what I try to do, is don't lose perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because you were a beginner at some point, or you were intermediate at some point. And if you you have years of practice and experience and you excel, sometimes people will just like forget that, and they'll like go out and do their thing, and they'll be like, I'm too good for that, or whatever else. But those are the people who need to come back into those clubs and like continue the education, continue the welcoming, and all that kind of stuff, even if it's once a month, or periodically, you know, um, give up some time and show up and offer some experience and expertise, that kind of stuff. I think that coach, mentoring, educator type of relationship really matters.
Yeah,
I can get on the soapbox about it.
yeah. Once you get that experience, you need to come back into the community that helped you out and teach people. And when I was working at Potomac's paddle sports this last summer, teaching brand new people, I learned a lot from them, and then I'm also solidifying my own skills that are your basics that you really don't work on as much when you're on the river, and that are important to go back to. And just being able to teach really helps get those skills down.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just about the connections, right? It's not always about being on the river. It's not always about being out there together on the water. I mean, there's other times and other opportunities where you create these friendships and you create these networks, and it's an opportunity to like go see some music together, or just go out to dinner, or go for a hike, or like do something, do something different, and changes the perspective,
Yeah, definitely. That's like when I went to the last Savage release with Nick Bully, Neil Pennington, and someone else. Oh, his son. And we did kayaking one day, then went spelunking the next, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, Nick, I would recommend that. Just in my experience, if all you ever do in these locations is always just kayak, like think about the people who always go out to like the lower Yak,
Yeah.
for instance. There's so much to do around there. Like, take a day and ride some bikes, or go for a hike, or do something else, especially if you're with a group of people, make it a little bit different.
Yeah,
Mix it up.
because you start to burn out when all you do is kayaking.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil said something that day when we went spelunking that really hit me was, I don't think it's that you like kayaking, it's that you like doing stuff that's adventurous. So trying different things rather than just kayaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would actually really agree with that. So, Joe, Nick knows, but I was a police officer for years, and you get like this weird addiction to the adrenaline, to the tunnel vision, the hyper focus that you get, just how you can kind of turn everything off and kind of be in that moment. So when I left police work, I went through this like kind of weird spout of depression, I'd say, maybe for like a month or two, where I was just kind of like, I don't really like, nothing really interests me, but kind of like you said, it was just like the I love kayaking, but that wasn't really what kept me in it. What kept me in it is there was a purpose for me to be there. It was something that pushed me to my limits, and then the fellowship that came with it. So yeah, I would definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other piece is having good people in the group,
Yeah.
who are, I'll say, like, I use my leadership stuff. So, coaching, mentor, educators, right? Have that kind of mindset, who are able to meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where are you? What do you know? Being able to ask those questions, gracious. Understanding that they're gonna not know everything, right? And then also being able to offer them kind words to let them know where they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
To say, hey, here's where you're at. Here's what you need to work on. Here's what you need to do before you can go to the next level, to where you're gonna, where, like I just think about back in Lancaster County. Where do a lot of people start? They start their journey up on the Lehigh.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier. It's forgiving, that kind of stuff. Then they move to, I don't know, Johnstown, the Stony releases, or the lower Yak, or things like that. And then they're like Savage, and then maybe the upper Yak. But there's other places you can always work skills in all those different places. The Gully, lower Gully, upper Gully, those different places. But people can get in over their heads, but it always takes a good coach and mentor to be able to have those conversations with people and say, here's what you're ready for, and here's how we can help you. Again, I'll circle back. It's why I think it's important that people with experience take the time to go out with people.
Yeah, Nick and I have touched on this before, but I think it's also like, as boaters, it's our duty to kind of remember those guys that have reached or gone out of their way, reached out to us, helped us out. Because there's been plenty of days where people called me and were like, "Hey, I'd like to do this class 1-2 run, and in my back pocket, I've got something much better planned for my Saturday." And it was a hard choice for me. And I hate to be that guy, but there's been several times where I'm like, God, dude, I've been boating class 1-2 for the past month. Been trying to help you guys out. You guys are on your own, but you kind of have to like step up and take that role because somebody did it for you. So yeah, I think that it's super important that we just kind of remember the guys who did it for us, and we're not afraid to step up and take the play.
You can always schedule something too. You can always say, "Hey, tomorrow's not a good time, but I'm available next weekend," or something
Yeah.
else like that.
Yeah.
It's okay to say no, I'm busy. If you have plans.
Mhm.
Um, I can relate to it. Um, skiing, because winter's here, and I'm thinking about skiing and going skiing. You guys ski?
Nope.
So
But
my
if you wanted to come to Colorado, I'd
yeah,
help you out, and
I
I would take you out, and I'd probably find somebody to get you lessons, or we would ski together, like on the green slopes or those kind of things, and I would have a good, fun day.
Do you have an extra
Because
room?
yeah,
green slopes are
this
Sweet.
room,
terrifying. I'm joking. I
this room here.
skied once and it was terrifying. Okay.
So to your point, Sam, it's not always about the water. Sometimes it's just about the camaraderie and the time you get to spend with your people.
Yeah.
I agree, because for like the last 3 or 4 years, I haven't really stepped it up. I've been doing a lot of class 2, 3, which I can do class 4. But for me, it was more about the people I was with rather than the river I'm on. And plus, you can have a really fun time because you're super comfortable, so you can take the playboat out and have fun time with people you love being around.
Yeah.
Which has its cons as well, because then I'm kind of holding myself back being on those simple rivers, but I'm also creating experiences too.
Yeah. Sam, I got a question for you, because this
Yeah.
kind of, I went from East Coast where I was boating year round to not boating year round. And now you're in Florida, and
Yeah. It
I,
sucks.
yeah, I mean, how is that for you? Like, what do you got to do?
Uh, frankly, I think this is like it's hard. It's embarrassing to admit, but like, I don't really have any hobbies. I just work all the time, and that's a shame. Huge outdoorsman. M- I married a Canadian who wanted to try out the coast. Obviously, the winters are cold, so I was like, let's do it. And I just can't get into anything here, man. Because like if you know anything about surfing, it's a pretty small man sport. I'm 6'4", 270. If there's just not a whole lot that interests me here. Like I don't I have zero interest in wreck paddling, and I just can't get into it. I feel like it's so boring. I'm like I wish an alligator would eat me. So
You can always go into gator wrestling,
I was
right?
say maybe you can do some gator hunting.
I thought about street fighting, but maybe not. I don't know. No,
Fishing.
like frankly, I'm bored out of my mind. So it's been debated whether we were going to move north or not. We've looked at her going back to school, like maybe in upstate New York, or us even moving to like she's from Ottawa, so maybe us move to Ottawa. But if that was the case, I think I'd have a lot more hobbies. I'm gonna try to become a better skier so I can keep up with my wife, and because I suck at skiing, it's bad. Something about those right hand S turns. It's just I always eat shit on them. But yeah, man, I just there's nothing really here that interests me, and anything that even did, I realized that like it's not really like the surfing thing. I was like maybe I'll get into that, but it's not for big guys. They don't really make equipment for really big guys, so I just have to long walks on the beach kind of thing.
Well, you can take your boat out into the waves.
Yeah, but here's the thing with that is it's kind of a two-man job unless you launch from a pier or something, because you realize how hard it is to playboat, like hop in a playboat and push through the waves.
I've done it. It's super fun.
It's
It's
hard.
You just gotta
I've tried
tuck.
it.
You just gotta tuck so you don't break your neck.
I've tried it too. It's hard.
It is
yeah,
extremely difficult, and some surfers can be real assholes.
yeah. That's another thing is surf culture doesn't really mix with what we do. Like you're kind of right. Like they don't really want you there. They don't want to share their space with you. So it's like it's very opposite of what I'm used to. So yeah, I have found like it's been a really great adventure to like move down here, but I've really found that like the culture here is really not for me. There's not like the outdoor culture is not really for me. I miss the mountains. I want to go mountain biking and skiing and kayaking. I don't. There's not really a whole lot for me down here.
Yeah, I think my move to Colorado kind of helped me like explore all of the different things that I like. Because there for a while, I found myself only kayaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy just to only do one thing, and I was like, oh man, I really miss my bike, but I'm gonna go kayaking. But I should ride my bike. Kind of forces me to get into other things out here because the seasons change and the opportunities change.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed that like I've gained a lot of weight since I moved down here, which is like starting to bug me. And I think that's just because like I'm not really going out and doing anything. So I will really have to get back on the ball. Like I even have a pair of rollerblades sitting next to me because I was like, I'm gonna get into rollerblading something, and I didn't.
Well, how far are you from Georgia?
So like if you went down to Columbus, like I can be at Columbus in like 4.5 hours,
It's
which
not
really
bad.
is no. I can definitely do it. But here's the thing is with as expensive as everything is in Florida, it's hard to justify doing that. I mean, yeah, I think that's a 9 hour trip round
Yeah.
trip. It's hard to justify the expense.
So your perspective would change if you moved out here.
Oh yeah,
Driving 4 hours one direction for a day trip happens all the time.
like
Like
here's the is if I had the community connections for it, I think I'd be okay with that. Um, but at the same time, with that being said, like I think kind of like where you're at, I would have more than one hobby. Does
yeah.
that make sense? So it wouldn't always have to be a 4 hour drive. If I didn't feel like doing the 4 hours, then I would just hop on a bike. So
Yeah, it's definitely yeah. You just reminded me something else. I was just thinking. Another thing that strikes me is just the terrain is very different out here.
mm-hmm.
The views, the canyons, the mountains, the things that you see when you're paddling, very different.
Yeah, I'd really like to make a trip sometime early summer and take my wife out. She's not really ever got to experience it, so probably not get on any. If we did any whitewater, probably just raft.
I want to go out there and do the Rogue River because that's a big, well-known multi-day trip.
Hmm.
I'm not sure where that is exactly. Somewhere
Well, I
over
mean,
there.
In Oregon,
Okay.
I think there's like there's a lot that I would really enjoy doing out that way. A lot of big name rivers I'd like to experience. But kind of like you were saying earlier, multi-day trips are kind of the only way to experience them. So you really have to plan them, and you're probably only going to get to do one a year, which I'm still all for. But this year's been kind of a turbulent year for change, whether between moving to Florida, starting a new career, getting remarried, kind of like everything's been up for grabs.
Well, if you go to Ottawa, I personally think the poutine is a little overrated. So don't get disappointed by that when you go there.
Oh well,
I rafted the Ottawa back in the day.
yeah, I'm
Commercial.
devoted. I've been watching videos. So I'm like I've been trying to reach out to different boating communities up that way that I've like met on TikTok and stuff. So super stoked to like hopefully make some better connections up there, um, and maybe try to boat some of that this coming summer.
Who'd you raft with, Joe?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember one of the bigger commercial rafting
I think
companies
Probably
up there.
it's
owl
I think
rafting is
it's
like
Al and something else.
yeah, owl rafting.
Then Al doesn't spark my memory. It was another company probably.
They're selling one of the raft companies up there. Me and Nick kind of talked about it. It was if I had the money, I would love nothing more than to buy.
one
Me
of
and
them
Nick,
one of them doesn't have the best reputation. I know that.
well, then that sounds perfect for us.
It's definitely a fun river, but the levels we went, it was a lot of flat water. But if you're gonna spend like hours at a play wave, then it's worth it.
Yeah, I'm open to experience it just once. I think with me just ordering the new Bigfoot, I'm eager to like kind of get in that, get my feel for it. Also, I'm kind of going through this weird thing. So my wife and I both had the Recons for a long time, and that was kind of my creek boat of choice. And I don't know what it is about hers, so she's kind of given me hers, and she doesn't boat in it anymore, and she's 6 foot, a little over 6 foot, so we can boat in the same boats. But dude, I don't know what it is, but I've outfitted it exactly like I did mine, and I feel so unstable and unbalanced in her boat.
Hmm.
I'm just like I feel instead of like I'm sitting in it, I feel like I'm sitting on top of it. I feel very top heavy in it.
The same exact boat.
Same exact boat, just different plastic scheme. Like
Huh.
maybe a different year, but like
Wow.
I can't figure it out. It's been bugging me.
That's an interesting question. I don't know. That's like a deeper manufacturer builder type of question.
Yeah, because I feel so uncomfortable and unstable in it with my old Recon, man. Like I I felt bulletproof. I never
Is there
missed.
a years difference?
Yeah, I think there's a year difference in the two. But mine was like the solid, so I think mine was a bit newer and hers is a bit older. But
So yeah, they
and
could have changed building materials in that time.
I feel like I'm sitting on top of the deck versus sitting in the boat, and so I feel really unstable. I feel like really top heavy.
Is
I
it
boat,
the seat and the plastic and that kind of stuff? How it's set in there different?
yeah, so the outfitting's all the same, but what I did was I pulled all the padding off the seat, see if that would drop me a little bit lower and make me feel a little bit deeper in the boat, and it did, but it didn't at the same time. So I don't really know, man. I was boating it at Montgomery Whitewater not too long ago, and I got really tired of doing combat rolls. I was like, holy crap.
Mm.
I just could not. I don't know. I felt really, really wonky in it. So I don't know.
Good role practice, I guess.
Yeah, I think what we'll probably end up doing it because like her boat's in such good shape because we just bought it for her beginning of last summer. So I'd say that we'll probably end up just selling it and getting another big creeker. I was thinking maybe like a Nirvana.
Have you been in a code?
So no, I haven't, but I have. So I love Dagger. So I used to paddle a Mamba back in the day. When I was like 16, the Mamba, and then I paddled a Piranha Burn for a long time, which is very different boats, but both very stable. I'd love to get in a code, but my problem is I'm a little concerned about the weight because, boy, I'm up there.
No, I'm 6'1", and with all my gear and everything in there, it's got plenty. And I ride in a large, and I could probably fit into a medium.
Where are you at weight wise?
With all my gear on. Well, right now I'm at like 230. I need to 235. I need to drop that. But with all my gear and everything else, I'm easily 260, 270 inside of that boat.
Yeah, I'd say with well, mind you, like I'm not doing multi-day trips. I'm not really packing them down. So like summer boating for me, I'd say that, mind you, I've gained a little bit of weight. But this past summer, I'd say with all my gear on, I was probably like 275.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would check it out. Check it out if you have access to one. Because it just reminded me of. So I liked my Mamba.
Mm-hmm.
That paddled that for a while, but then I got the Rewind, and it just kind of reminds me of the Rewind, but it has better stability because it's not a half slice.
Yeah.
And it has good primary and secondary stability, and it just wants to come back up. And I've been in I always getting confused. I haven't been in the new Nirvana. There's a difference between the two, right? The new last year's release and then there's this year's release. Anyway, I was in the Nirvana, and it was okay, but I just didn't. I felt tippy in it. For whatever reason.
I would
It's
say that
huge.
it is huge, but I'll tell you kind of a brag here is at Montgomery where the water first starts flowing in, where they're pumping the water through it. There's this really nice wave. They were kind of tinkering around with it and had made a pretty nice hole with it. And I was able to get that boat to stern squirt, and it made me really happy that I was able to get such a big creek boat to go vertical.
That's crazy.
Easy, okay. It didn't look good, but it was fun. So.
Yeah, I just got the Nirvana. I mostly got it because the amount of volume is great for multi-day trips and bigger water.
Yeah, have you gotten it yet? I know you were kind of.
Yeah, I have it. I took it out yesterday on flat water, and oh my god, I just hate paddling in tons of gear because it's cold out. It's just it's so restricting.
You should get used to it, Nick.
Yeah, if I'm gonna go out west, I have to.
And that's why, speaking of things, Sam, I gain weight and that kind of stuff. So that's why I don't fit in my Rockstar right now. I got to work on getting that down this winter. So that way I'll fit into it on my way in the spring.
Car behind me, so it doesn't get much bigger when it comes to play boats than the Monstar. Yeah, but no, I need to cut some weight. I've just been I think that when I was boating all the time, when I started noticing my weight was climbing, I had that drive because at the time I was boating a Scorch, which is probably one of my favorite creekers of all time. I think that boat's such a well-performing boat. So you're looking at like top end of the weight range is about 255, and I was constantly like, I need to stay in this boat because I enjoy it. So it gave me a drive to lose the weight, to eat better, be in the gym, and then like down here in Florida, everything's so expensive, so you're just working to live. So it's like we don't really do much of anything now, which is kind of a shame. I boat as much as I can, but when you only get 2 days off work, it's hard to do a 16-hour round trip and still get back in time for work the next Monday.
Yeah, it's not cheap to live out here either.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not.
It's a lot cheap. If I wanted cheaper living, I would have stayed in Lancaster.
Yeah, I miss.
But you sacrifice that. The trade-off is I wake up, I drive 10 minutes to work. I can skin after work, ride after work. I can go kayak a little bit after work, whatever, like weekends, it's just a different kind of access.
What are you doing?
I do miss the East Coast though.
What are you doing for work out there?
I'm a nurse.
Okay.
But,
I'm
in my
you do that anywhere.
yeah, I've been in my 24th year. I'm into my 24th year of nursing.
Oh, nice.
But I've also collected other degrees along the ways and had different roles. But I moved out here for one job, and then I changed jobs last May, and this is a different opportunity. I'm actually working in long-term care, assisted living, and I had not done this aspect of nursing in my career, and it's been rewarding. It's definitely different, and it offers a nice work-life balance. So like I said, it works out.
It's always good to have a nurse on your team when you're kayaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were actually we talked about this last time, last podcast, but so I mean, there's not really an excuse for me, but I was a police officer for 7 years, did some med work. I've done a little bit of everything. I always had like I built my own med kit in my car. And that's one thing I've noticed is like I don't boat with one, and how stupid is that? At least have something,
Yeah, you should always have a med kit with you. Some minor med kit stuff. I put stuff in. I have a smaller dry sack that it's shoved in the back of my boat, and it pretty much stays back there. I'll pull it out and check it periodically, but it's like the basics would be like a multi-day hiking first aid, and then I add some other stuff in there. I like I add a tourniquet, one of those tourniquets. I think those are important. Some splint. I have one of those roll splints. You can always find sticks and things like that, but there's different things. So I add to it, but I always have that in the back of my boat. That's in there, and my breakdown paddle is in there always. Those are two things that I have had to use them both, and I'm glad that they're there when I have.
And
I've thought about like some medical tape, obviously tourniquet. You probably it wouldn't hurt to have some Israeli bandages, some gauze. Just we've all seen that guy that somehow busts his eyebrow wide open. Like seems like every he leaves with new stitches. So probably wouldn't be a bad idea to keep some of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a less need for a tourniquet, but heck, you never know.
Dude, some of the things that, like, obviously in my career and in yours, I've seen, it's like sometimes you can't fix stupid, and stupid things are going to happen.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's good to have too. I think I always wonder about what if something happens to me? Who's going to take care of me?
Yeah.
And I think and it's a whole other thing. We can do another episode on some of this kind of stuff, but I think about like swiftwater rescue course. That's important. I think people should do it. If you're going to be boating, you should do it. It's kind of like it'd be the equivalent of my avalanche area course 1 backcountry avalanche stuff. Like I want to make sure that I'm going in the backcountry with people with their course, because if something happens, what are we going to do? Or they're like, oh, let's go into this terrain and let's go into this area. I mean, like, well, what experience do you have? Do you know how to, know how to navigate and that kind of stuff? And then, I guess I kind of look at it like me going along the river without a first aid kit is like me going in the backcountry without my beacon, probe, and shovel.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
So this is my pitch to people. What happens if you're the person with the first aid kit and other people don't have it or don't have the knowledge or whatever else.
Yeah,
You know, I
it's super important when you have the gear to actually know how to use it.
yeah. One of my and it's one of the guys I boat with actually he has an AED now.
Mm-hmm.
He had an unfortunate experience where they needed it, where they could have used an AED and didn't have access to one.
Yeah.
Uh, and a boater was lost because, for various reasons, but, he now boats with an AED.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and here's the thing: is like obviously they're extremely expensive, but they make there's they can make them relatively small and portable these days. I know that like I had one in my patrol car. Like there's just really not a reason not to have one. Like if you can afford it, I go for it. I think that would also be kind of a cool thing to do is maybe we do a video, like maybe we do a podcast and or just video just on that, like basic field first aid. Um, you know, obviously you shouldn't really be getting on the river unless you know CPR. Like that's duh. Like drowning 1-on-1. Let's talk about it.
yeah, that would be an awesome episode. And I know someone who teaches like wilderness first aid and those certifications in NOC, so I'll see
Yeah,
if they can join us
yeah,
as well.
definitely. I would say that'd be definitely a good topic. Would be first aid and basic first aid, or scenarios, or case studies, or things that you might run into. Because we talk. You go through the Swiftwater course. You're talking about, what do we learn in the Swiftwater course, right? You know, rescue then recovery and ways to move through the water and work together as a team and that kind of stuff. But we don't. Yeah, I think we don't think we talk about a lot of first aid pieces. You
Yeah,
know.
like in the Swiftwater stuff, it's like rescue, recovery, then what? You know,
Yeah.
so like you understand how to get somebody out of the water, but you know they're not really telling you about the hypothermia that can come with exposure to cold temperatures or blood loss. They don't, they're not talking about these things.
Smash your head off of a rock when you're going on a roll.
Yeah,
I've smashed my thumbs and my fingers in between rocks and my paddle, you know,
yeah,
broken bones, different things like that. What do you
yeah,
do?
And taking these classes is a really good way to find people who you want to paddle with because you're like, oh, they're investing in their education and their knowledge, so those are the kind of people I want to paddle with.
Mhm.
And really taking note of who's taking leadership in those classes and paying attention because a lot of these certifications, as long as you pay and show up, they're going to give it to you. So actually noting as well as who's there, but who's actually participating and paying attention because just being there isn't enough.
yeah, and kind of like we talked about, like for new boaters that are listening, like don't be afraid of the cost. Um, because most of them are not very expensive, and frankly, if you're on the river and you're boating, uh, I mean, I wouldn't promise it, but I would say that like if you went to someone, you're like, hey, I'm super eager in learning this. I'm just broke right now. Like I don't really have a ton of money. I would say that they're probably going to try to work with you to get you in, especially when clubs are doing these because they want as many people in their club to be prepared as possible.
And there's nonprofits and stuff as well that provide that training. I like what Charlie Duffy is doing, where he's combining the wilderness first aid class and making it more specific to paddlers.
Mm.
So you're getting that certification, then you're also going over situations that more apply to paddlers, which is very nice. So you can actually see real practical situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my Swiftwater course I took when I was out here, and I did some some other not official Swiftwater courses back east. It was kind of like club run, or other people would do some stuff, but the one I went through was really good. And I think what made it good for me was there was a really good didactic piece, a really good piece where we actually sat there and talked about things. And it wasn't all just this hands on in the river and everything else. So we could, and then it was back and forth. So it was like learn, apply, talk about it, that kind of stuff. So it was really well done.
Yeah, there's a thing in the ACA curriculum. I don't remember the percentages exactly, but it's like you remember a certain percentage by hearing it, doing it, and
Mm-hmm.
different ways of learning. And the
Yeah, I mean,
most,
basic fundamental adult learning is three times three different ways,
yeah,
and then you'll remember
yep. Most people learn by doing hands-on things.
it. Yeah.
So it's really finding that balance between being in the classroom and actually doing it. There's a place I saw out west called the Swiftwater Safety Institute or something like that in Utah, Oregon, somewhere in that area. And that looks like an interesting thing that I want to do. They have whole courses dedicated to like ropes and rigging and
Mm.
different specifics. Because I want to get into expedition kayaking myself and do those trips that not many people do. So I get to kind of say I did it or
Right.
see something that not many people will. Like, I think it's the Kings. I think it's like a class 5+ run where you have to hike like 2 or 3 miles into it. It's just insane.
With ever boated in South America, I mean, there's going to be trips where that's pretty much any run. And like if you're boating in Honduras, there's places where you're gonna be carrying your shit for 3 and 4 miles. Like, don't be surprised. And I think that kind of goes back to what I've been dealing with. Is like, dude, I got to get in shape. Like, I've got to start taking better care of myself because I've got to, like, I want to do these things, but it only gets further and further away from me the more I just kind of give up. So I
Yeah.
think I've got a little bit more drive lately.
Yeah, I just started tracking calories because I was like, wow, damn, this is the heaviest I've been. And getting out of my Nirvana yesterday, I was like, I'm on flat water and I'm out of breath after 2 strokes.
So I'll say this out loud because I need to hear it too for myself. But it's say I don't want this or I don't need to do this. Like I don't need to eat that cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't need to drink that beer. I don't right, as opposed to I can't or I shouldn't, that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
don't is a better word to use, like in the whole mental meaning of that when you say that.
Yeah. How you speak to yourself really matters in the words that
Mhm.
you use.
And then set some goal out there in the future that you have to work towards, and make it cost you.
Yeah. Put some skin in the game for sure.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing that you say that. So like I have cirrhosis of the liver. So non-alcoholic cirrhosis. It started as fatty liver. Didn't catch it until I was in college. Didn't take it serious. So it's like, dude, I've got to cut this weight. Like I've got to take better care of myself, or you guys are doing themselves. I've got to get back on top of it. I think I need to start either like going on hikes down here or whatever I can get into. It's just coastal living really isn't for me. I dream about the mountains. Jimmy, buddy, he can have his beach.
I guess how can you hold yourself accountable to something?
Yeah, well, I think in the past I've always just done it like kind of like you said, there had to be a cost at the end of it. For a long time it was boating, and it's hard to do it because it's like I can always make that cost my hobbies because I can always justify being like, man, this is you have to be able to do this, whether it was work, whether I had to be able to sprint, shoot, and carry my partner, or if it were boating where I had to constantly be ready to react, be on top of it, be vigilant. And then now I'm just kind of like I find myself with too much idle time.
Mm-hmm.
So with Montgomery whitewater shutting down for the winter, like I don't foresee a lot of boating in my future, at least probably until spring. And I'm just like, oh man, I've got to get into something. Probably, I don't know, probably going to think about maybe getting back into mountain biking a little bit, even if I have to do it around here on some swamp trails. It's better than nothing.
For me, the most successful I've been with being healthy was because I just paid someone to annoy the shit out of me. So I paid for a personal trainer to hound me, and that was a couple years ago. And like, here's $1,200. I couldn't afford that shit at the time, but I got down to like 165, probably my healthiest.
Yeah,
because
like,
I had that accountability and I was putting money into it. Whereas when you get stuff for free, you're not as willing to stick to it because there's no loss.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the crappy thing is like beginning of this year, I was at my lightest that I've been since I got out of college, and I was, I think I was like down to like 235, which is pretty low for me with what my build is. So I was feeling pretty good about myself, and then like we've been here for I don't know, probably like 6 months, and in 6 months, man, I've gained probably 35 pounds plus.
A move's stressful.
Oh yeah, and then like changing career paths was a stressful thing, but I think that we won't be here for much longer. We said we'd give it a year. If we loved it, we'd. I don't move to Florida.
Yeah.
My sister's moving there because she loves the beach and amusement parks. But
I
it
tell her
is,
she'll go to the beach 3 times and then she'll never go back.
she's finding out how expensive it is.
Yeah, it's dude, it's a lot cooler to dream of when you're a kid than actually do it. So I realized how good I had it. I miss my old Rocky Top, and I'm ready to go home and get back on the Koi, get back into some boating, be around my friends. So we'll see. Either way, even if we moved to like upstate, I think I'd be happy because it's the mountains. I can get into skiing in the winter. I can boat in the summer. Probably get back into hunting a little bit more.
And so many great kayakers are coming from New York. Like Don Beamer and a bunch of his friends came from New York because you got like the moose, the beaver, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'm eager. That's another thing because I'm eager to boat new things. It's been a long time since I've done any travel boating. I just I feel like I'm ready to move on and learn new things, have new experiences. So, yeah. So I know there's a lot of change coming for us beginning of next year. So we'll see how it goes.
Did I miss what you did a career change? What
So
did you?
I was a police officer. I did that for 7 years, and then one day woke up and realized that I was miserable, and I was tired of working for an administration that would never back me and a public that would probably never understand me. So I was like, time to scoot. Which I'm sure you understand to an extent, being a nurse, like
Mhm.
not treated very well.
What did you move into?
So now I sell motorcycles. So I'm working sales, which has been kind of nice because I was always really good working with the public. I worked crisis intervention for my last few years. So talking to people is easy. I'm succeeding pretty well in it. I do pretty good for myself in sales. Make a lot more money than I did as a cop. But I don't know. I just find that it would be nice if I could have this job in the mountains.
I think you'd be selling different kinds of motorcycles up in the mountains than you do in Florida.
Well, yeah, probably not though, because like I sell like down here, I'm selling BMW and Indian, which the BMW Adventure Line's kind of like the big thing everywhere. So
Hmm.
uh, I think, and then I sell Polaris as well. My dealership has BMW, Indian, it has several things, but yeah, everybody hears my accent. And they're like, "Yeah, that dude knows about some Polaris off roading right there." They're like,
It breeds authority.
I mean, I didn't even get into that about out here. I mean, there's side by sides
"Yeah,
and the dirt bikes and the dual sports and snowmobiles. I mean, that's a whole other thing, you know.
I figure if we moved to upstate, I'd probably try to get a job doing a similar thing, probably selling for Polaris because I know so much about them. But then I have to learn more about their snowmobiles, and I've never been on a snowmobile in my life. So
Yeah, and out here you got the powder sleds,
yeah, you
the
guys kind
with the turbos, and
of,
they got to get up it. They got to get up through that snow and cooling. The technology's come a long way.
yeah. So we'll see. I'm just like I'm eager for some change from this. So.
Like I said earlier, right? Got bad news for you. If you really want it to happen, you can make it happen.
Oh, it will be happening. We're
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So my wife and I were talking about it, and it was like it's just vicious, and it might just be like it might be everybody, but there's this like vicious cycle right now that's taking place where it's like I'm making more money than I've ever made, and so is she, but everything costs more than it ever has, and it's like it's almost like a trap. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. It's like it's economically, it's like very much so a trap for us right now because it's like when we moved down here, it cost 10 grand. Well, we never can get ahead 10 grand, so how do we move back and find jobs and like do I go back to law enforcement just to get us moved back? And so there's been a few things, but she's looking at going to like Cairo school possibly, or even like physio, like in upstate, and that way we'd be a little bit closer to her family in Ottawa. And if she does that, then I guess we're just gonna have to bite the bullet, take the plunge. So
Yeah, it's tough. Inflation,
yeah,
cost, goods, everything.
Yeah, even kayaks like piranhas are $1,700 now.
Yeah.
yeah. I saw that? What the heck? The last brand new piranha I bought was that Scorch. I bought it last year. I paid like 14 something.
I think a lot of it comes down to shipping, transportation of the boats.
Yeah, the charges of the boat. And I mean, I guess if you're shipping a boat from Europe, that kind of adds up.
Yeah, they're all coming from
Labor
the
cost
UK.
is the biggest. The labor cost is the biggest. That's the biggest factor for anything. Is the how do you incorporate the cost of labor? You know, if you think about it, everybody wants to be paid more. We need to be paid more because the cost of goods have gone up, right?
Yeah.
And then how are you going to, you know, cover that cost of labor? You know,
Yeah,
you
and
got
these
to increase your costs. It's like that vicious cycle that we're in.
yeah, and these
You
boats
know,
aren't made in China anymore, where they can pay them a penny a day to make your boat.
Yeah, and that was like when I bought my new Soul kayak. Like we paid just a little over $2,000 for it, and that's the most I've ever spent on a boat in my life. Like that was insane. Um, and that's been kind of like that was kind of a hard trigger to pull. I think I was like, holy crap, man! It's like this is a hobby, and I'm about to drop $2,000 on a boat, like a boat that my luck I'll probably bust in the first 2 seasons.
Well, the thing that stinks about those boats is it takes like 6 months to get them. It's not like you spend $2,000 and you get it right away.
No, I'm still waiting. Which we've been told that it'd be like like I should expect it to arrive at my house the second week of December. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, so I'm just kind of waiting. I know that it took them a while to get in to get
I
across.
mean, here we're talking about how expensive new stuff is, but you know, circling back to something we said, the secondary market, the used market is very reasonable.
Very.
It's very reasonable. You know, you can get a kayak, spray skirt, paddle, helmet, PFD, you know, very reasonably.
I've seen
Unless it's a Jackson.
Well, and what happens is, you know, you'll see people who will, you know, they'll get into it, they'll be into it for a summer, and they're like, yeah, this isn't for me, and then they sell their whole outfit.
Yeah, it's kind of like the van life. People went out, got excited about buying vans and living in vans, and now you see so many for sale.
How's that working out for you, Nick?
Not well, because money. Put $5,000 into the van over the summer for a van that's 20 years old.
Yeah, so the secondary market is very reasonable. You just have to look for it. It's there, you know, comes and goes.
Yeah, people are proud of their Jacksons. So if you're a new boater, be prepared to be disappointed in that.
Wow. They're the best boat on the market.
Oh, shut your mouth.
We're the iPhones of the boating industry. We retain our value and we're easy to use.
Listen, okay.
Use
I have
coupon
one.
code.
But mind you, I believe this boat's a 2010, and I paid like $600 for it. So I'm not super thrilled about that. But whatever. Here we are. I'll boat with something that I have to adjust the outfitting every 10 minutes. It's whatever.
That's the nice thing about the Dagger. I had the antics, and every time my feet would lose feeling, I'd have to change the outfitting every 10 minutes. And I paddled my friend's Rewind, and I was like, why am I torturing myself in this boat? And like sold it the next week and got ended up just getting a Nirvana.
When I was a teenager, like the first half slice boat I ever had was. Do you guys remember like the Dagger Axioms?
Yeah, those are great.
Dude, killer river runner boats. I mean, that thing was fast. And I wouldn't like really consider it like a true half slice, which it was. It didn't perform very well. Kind of like the Ripper One. It's like it is what it is. It just didn't perform as a half slice very well. But dude, I loved that boat. It was awesome. And that was the first boat I think I ever actually got comfortable in. And that's when I realized like Dagger has really good outfitting. You know, him and Piranha's outfitting's not that comfortable, but they've been making a pretty sturdy outfitting since the beginning. So
Yeah, the Axiom was a great boat, as well as the Party Brap, which you don't see either of those boats that much anymore.
no, when you do, it's like they're like been through a shredder and some 10-year-olds in it, and you're like, God.
So, Joe, what's the most beginner-friendly river near you?
Upper Colorado,
So, what's that like?
wide, flat, few rapids here and there, but like it's a fun float. It can be fast, but I mean, the Upper Colorado is a lazy day. It's not like crazy kayaking and that kind of stuff. It's more, I'd
Okay.
say, yeah, but I've kayaked at least from Pump House down through into state bridge or two bridges, beyond that. But I've also been in rafts and stuff like that as well. Um, one that you can just do laps on is the Shoshone, and that's pretty
Sounds
friendly.
familiar.
Which is in Glenwood Canyon, in the canyon. So it's pretty neat. Um,
Well, you mentioned something about a lot of the creeks being made of granite. I listened to a
I,
podcast where Russ Sturges was saying those are the best kind of rivers to kayak. Do you know why that is? I forget the reason he
Maybe
said.
the water flow. I'm not
I'd
sure.
have to look more into it because I remember him mentioning that. And I was like, huh.
Yeah, I don't. You'd have to look it up. I would love to show you a picture of the Glenwood Canyon and the Shoshone in that area.
I've also found that like we boat a lot of really muddy water around here, right? Um, and what in my boating experiences out west, at least I always found the scenery to be a little bit nicer. The water felt like it was always crystal clear. Like it was, just the rivers are just very different than just in my experiences. I found them to be quite a bit bigger. Now, mind you, I've not been out there since I was like 17, boated and done any boating. So
Some of the rivers or pictures I've seen, the water's just like crystal clear. Kind of like when I went to Mexico, you could flip over and see the fish swimming. It was super cool. Just the only
Can you
difference is you're shitting out your brains the next day from swallowing that water.
let me see what happens if I press this button? You see that?
Yes. Oh,
oh,
pictures.
So this is the Colorado River. This is above the Shoshone. This is like upper above Shoshone, and that's my buddy Tyler paddling through this. And I was just took some photos of him in this water.
in that large mountain,
And if you're watching this and you go to this place and see these photos and you like them, hit the buy photo button, not the print screen button.
Yeah, right. But I'll go through it pretty quickly here. This is kind of what I was talking about, how a lot of the water is like this, and it's pretty consistent.
Oh, that's sick.
And what you're looking at.
It's definitely the kind of stuff I'd like to get into more.
Yeah. Let me find just kind of what you're paddling in. I'll show you another one. So this is the Colorado through Glenwood Canyon.
That's crazy, and it's just like right next to a road.
Yeah, that's I-70. So just below this, around that corner, is where the put in is for the traditional run. We hiked up because he wanted to paddle these bigger waters.
Are a lot of the rivers roadside?
No, a lot they can be, but sometimes you're getting into canyons, so there's no.
we need to come visit you.
Yeah, dang,
Yeah.
this man's got a personal photographer.
Yeah, I just took him in. Let me go back to this. Yeah, so this is like kind of what I want to do with my work is have people hire me to go shoot their day.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's kind of what I think. What's his name? Scott Lingrid on the movie The River Runner. He got into more video, but similar thing, just with still photos.
So let me find. I'll share again as soon as I get back to something that's.
And then you can start doing events and stuff too, like the GoPro.
I did do that, but let me show you. I'll share my screen again. So this I shot the Vail Wreck Whitewater race series. So like here was race 1. And this is at International Bridge where we're looking down, where you see this is where they do the GoPro, the freestyle kayak.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen that.
Yeah, so that's where they do that at.
Is this like a full release? Because that looks pretty shallow.
No, that's early on, so that's probably 600. I think I have it. I don't know if I had it labeled or not. But you can kind of see like I'm down low, so you know this is so these weren't. If see where this guy in this he's in a Nomad, where the nose of his kayak is. There's like a pillow there that they can inflate.
Huh,
So
that's
then
dope.
it creates a wave in there.
That's so cool.
And that's not inflated there, but during the GoPro games it's inflated. And the water will go up higher during the GoPro games.
Okay.
And so,
Nick, we
they
should.
set up these courses and they do these different courses and like I'm there and I'm able to get these photos.
I think I saw an Apex up there. Sponsor me, EJ.
Yeah. So this is just the Vale town series. You know, it's it's just a lot of fun. These are my friends Caleb and Kalen, who I boat with. But like, there's just you get kayaks and boaters and you get all kinds of people. This is me just down at the end. I'm gonna scroll up, but
Nick, we should put a trip out there. That would be a blast, especially while they're doing that. Like plan like a 2-week trip out there.
Yeah, that would be sick.
and then this is whitewater series, too, and this is the put in, so they slide off of these. They'll launch like 3 people at a time. I can't. It's not opening up for me in the way I want it to.
You talking about when they launch for the races?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen.
I think it stopped sharing for some reason. I think I had like a bandwidth issue. Anyway, so yeah, so they launch. I'll show you. Launch off these like platforms into there.
That's a very, very sophisticated platform there.
Yeah. But so I just took a bunch of the scene, the dogs. This is them launching. Here. There's a good example of a launch.
That's a cool view.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the Vale Whitewater series. Let me see if I have anything else that might be interesting to show you. Oh yeah. This one is Glenwood Springs, the Glenwood Springs wave.
Oh yes, sir. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah.
That's money right there.
So the kayakers will come in from this side, and the stand-up paddlers will often come in from the other side, just because there's some shallower waves on the other side.
And I'm sure we've all wondered this, but man, I have to give it to the stand up paddlers because, golly, that the fear of busting your face. Holy crap, man! No thanks.
I feel like
there's a surfer right there.
I feel like they probably bust their face so many times it's just nothing anymore. There's a guy out here, Andy Hinton, and that dude was sick on a sup. He'd do flooded rivers. He did the Savage once, and I'm pretty sure he was a little inebriated on his sup when it was freezing cold water. Just doing a badass job.
See, there you go. There's a guy.
See, that's something we don't get a ton of out here. Is like those big glassy waves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My wife got into surfing, so I really want her to experience like what a really nice glassy waves like. But we just get a bunch of holes here. There's not a ton of places that you're going to find it.
That's why you need to go back to the Ottawa.
Yeah, you see that? I don't know if you guys are still seeing this or not.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so they get up there and try to surf and have a good time.
That does look like a good time.
But yeah, that's Glenwood Springs. But yeah, I could show pictures, some of the areas that I've done. See if I have anything else that's interesting that I would share. Oh, probably from last year. I'll probably go to that one.
I feel like I could spend an entire day there at that wave.
2 minutes. Um, I want to say maybe this one. Oh yeah. This is a Royal Gorge. Just kind of go through it. Just different kind of terrain.
Yeah. Damn.
Wow. Yeah.
I want to walk on that bridge.
Yeah, it's a train bridge,
Oh,
and they run the train through there.
maybe not
So
then.
it's completely different. So there's my shredder. So I do have the rubber too, but yeah, it's up there. You know.
I've got to plan a trip now. You've given me the bug.
Yeah. Yeah. What else can I show you? Anyway,
It's the little whitewater tees.
Yeah. So yeah. So it's just different, but yeah.
You know, you might have a room where you can fit 2 people.
I have a couch. I got plenty of space. You know, it's a whole other thing, and maybe we could talk about this some other time. But travel is expensive. Staying places is expensive. That kind of stuff. And I live in outdoor paradise, and people live in other places. That kind of stuff. And at some point, one of my friends opened up her place, and I was able to stay in her place before I made the final move out here, and that helped sell it for me. And her graciousness and friendship, helped bridge the way out here.
Mm-hmm.
And, I want to continue to offer that, So I've had friends come out and mostly ski, because it's, that. But, it's up, I just like to be that person, to be like, come, all you got to do is get here. And it's only 1 mile walk to the airport.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
In my house. So
are you in a house? Is that a house or an apartment?
I live in a house.
Oh, that's
I have
awesome.
a roommate.
So here's my thing is like, I think if I do travel back out west, I'm going to drive, because flying with a boat is a nightmare. If you've never done it, just know it's the worst. And I find that like I probably enjoy the road trip quite a bit.
It's a long drive.
Yeah.
Going to Canada for Christmas, Florida. It's a 28-hour drive from here to Ottawa. So we'll be doing that. I've got to do it in like less than 48 hours. So
damn. Only time I went, I was a passenger, so it was great.
My wife will not drive, man. She's just like, I'm gonna go to sleep in the passenger seat.
That's the worst, when they just sleep the whole time, no one to talk to.
Oh yeah, that's her. Yep, she'll sleep the whole time. And if you make her drive, she'll drive for about 3 hours before she has a panic attack because of traffic.
Well, I gotta get moving on some other stuff, Nick.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm happy to come on and talk about anything else too. I have a expertise in leadership and that kind of stuff too.
Oh, perfect.
And we talked a little bit about mental health, but that's an important topic for me to talk about as well.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back.
I'd like to be, I'm working on being more vulnerable about that myself. Dudes don't talk about that kind of stuff, and we need to talk about it more.
No,
especially so. And I have a different, we all have life challenges that, I think through shared experiences and shared conversations, we can see and understand that we're not alone, and that other people are experiencing other things. It's only surface deep, and I think that's an important topic to talk about.
And I think what I've wanted to do for years was have like a closed private conversation where this isn't recorded, of male kayakers, where we can open up and share our stories and have that accountability of eating better, exercising, sleep, all that kind of stuff. If this is something you guys would be interested in joining, just let me know. Shoot me a DM through my Whitewater Academy account on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you follow us. Never miss an episode of Wild Perspectives again. Make sure you subscribe or follow whatever channel you're viewing this on.